At 5:47 a.m. on December 23, 2019, 8-year-old Sophie Martinez was sleeping peacefully in her bedroom in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Christmas was just one day away, and her family's house was filled with the quiet excitement of the holiday season. But Max, their 3-year-old chocolate Labrador, knew something his human family didn't. Hidden in the sweet-scented air of their home was a silent killer that could take away everyone he loved. For the past 3 hours, Max had been keeping a secret vigil in the snowy yard, watching and waiting, preparing for the moment when he would have to save his entire pack. Sophie had no idea that when Max grabbed her pajama sleeve and pulled her from her warm bed, she was about to witness the most extraordinary act of love any dog had ever shown. She didn't know that her loyal companion had spent the whole night planning their rescue from a danger no human could detect. What happened in the next 30 minutes would not only save 5 lives, but reveal a miracle about the bond between animals and families that would leave everyone who heard their story in tears. This is the true account of the morning that changed everything. The old wooden clock in the Martinez family kitchen read 5:47 a.m. when Max first knew something was terribly wrong. Sophie Martinez was sleeping peacefully in her small bedroom on the second floor of their house on Maple Street in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Outside, fresh snow covered the ground like a white blanket. Christmas was only one day away, and wrapped presents waited under the tree downstairs. But Max, the family's 3-year-old chocolate Labrador, wasn't thinking about Christmas morning. His brown eyes were wide with worry as he paced back and forth across Sophie's bedroom floor. Max had never woken anyone up this early before. He was usually a good dog who slept through the night on his favorite rug downstairs. But tonight felt different. Something in the air didn't smell right. Something in the house didn't sound right. The big dog walked over to Sophie's bed and sniffed the air again. There it was, that strange, sweet smell that made his nose twitch. It reminded him of the metal tools in Daddy's garage, but sweeter. Max didn't like it at all. He looked down at 8-year-old Sophie, who was curled up under her purple comforter with her stuffed elephant, Peanut. Her long, dark hair spread across her pillow, and she breathed slowly and deeply. Too deeply, Max thought. Something about the way she was sleeping bothered him. Max gently placed his front paws on the edge of Sophie's bed. "Woof," he said quietly, trying not to scare her. When she didn't move, he tried again, a little louder. "Woof!" Still nothing. Max's heart started beating faster. His family always woke up when he made noise. Always. But Sophie just kept sleeping. That strange, deep sleep. The worried dog walked around to the side of the bed where he could reach Sophie better. Very carefully, he used his cold, wet nose to nudge her arm. Sophie made a small sound but didn't open her eyes. Max knew he had to try harder. He grabbed the corner of Sophie's purple comforter with his teeth and pulled gently. The blanket moved a little, letting cold air touch Sophie's face. Sophie mumbled, pulling the blanket back up to her chin. But Max didn't give up. He had never felt this worried about his family before. Something was definitely wrong, even if he couldn't understand what it was. His dog instincts told him that his pack was in danger. This time, Max grabbed Sophie's pajama sleeve with his teeth. The fabric was soft and had little snowflakes printed on it. Very gently, because he never wanted to hurt Sophie, Max started pulling her arm toward the edge of the bed. "Max?" Sophie's voice was sleepy and confused. Her eyes fluttered open, but she looked dizzy. "What's wrong, boy?" Max's tail didn't wag like it usually did when Sophie talked to him. Instead, he kept pulling at her sleeve, trying to get her to stand up. Sophie sat up slowly in bed and rubbed her eyes. "Max, it's still dark outside. Why are you waking me up?" The house felt different to Sophie, too, though she couldn't say why. There was a smell in the air that she didn't recognize. Not bad exactly, but not normal either. And Max was acting. So strange. His ears were back against his head, and he kept looking toward the door like he wanted to run somewhere. "Are you sick, Max?" Sophie asked, reaching out to pet his soft, chocolate-colored fur. But Max stepped away from her hand, something he had never done before. Instead, he walked toward her bedroom door and looked back at her with those worried brown eyes. Then he did something that made Sophie's stomach feel funny. He whined. Not a happy whine like when he wanted to go outside to play. This was a scared whine. Sophie threw off her covers and put her feet on the cold floor. "Okay, Max, I'm coming." Max's tail gave one small wag of relief, but he still looked very serious. He led Sophie out of her bedroom and down the dark hallway toward her parents' room. Their house was old, and the floorboards creaked under their feet. When they reached her parents' bedroom door, Max sat down and looked up at Sophie. Then he whined again, louder this time. It was the kind of sound that made Sophie want to cry, even though she didn't know why. Sophie reached for the door handle to her parents' room, her heart beating fast. But before she could turn it, Max suddenly jumped up and ran toward the stairs. He stopped at the top and barked. Not his usual happy bark, but a sharp, urgent sound that echoed through the quiet house. Something was very, very wrong, and Max was the only one who knew what it was. Sophie hurried down the stairs after Max, her bare feet cold against the wooden steps. The Christmas tree lights twinkled softly in the living room, casting red and green shadows on the walls. Under CTV, the tree, wrapped presents, sat waiting for tomorrow morning. But Max wasn't interested in Christmas right now. He ran straight to the pull-out couch where Sophie's parents were sleeping. Elena and Carlos Martinez had given up their bedroom to Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel, who were visiting for the holidays. The couch was opened into a bed, and Sophie could see her parents sleeping under a thick blue blanket. Max jumped up and put his front paws on the couch. He started pawing at Mama's arm, his claws making soft scratching sounds against the sheets. "Mama," Sophie whispered, walking over to the couch. "Mama, wake up! Max is acting really weird." Elena Martinez moved a little bit, but she didn't open her eyes right away. When she finally did, she looked confused and sleepy, in a way that wasn't normal for her. Mama was usually wide awake as soon as someone called her name. "Sophie?" Mama's voice sounded funny, slow and thick. "What time is it, mija?" "It's early, but Max woke me up," Sophie said. "He's been acting scared and he won't stop whining." Elena tried to sit up, but she moved very slowly, like she was dizzy. She put her hand to her forehead and blinked several times. "I feel strange," she said. Max was still pawing at the blanket, whining louder now. He looked at Elena with those worried brown eyes, then ran toward the front door and back to the couch. Back and forth, like he was trying to tell them something very important. "What's wrong with him?" Sophie asked. Elena sniffed the air and frowned. There was that smell, sweet and a little bit like metal. She had noticed it in her sleep, but now it seemed stronger. "Do you smell that, Sophie?" Sophie nodded. "It's been in the house all morning. Max doesn't like it either." Elena's nursing training started to kick in through her sleepy confusion. Sweet, metallic smell. Feeling dizzy and confused. Having trouble waking up. These symptoms reminded her of something she had learned about in school, something very dangerous. She looked over at Carlos, her husband, who was still sleeping deeply beside her. too deeply. Elena shook his shoulder. Carlos, Carlos, wake up. Carlos didn't move at first. Elena shook him harder. Carlos! Finally, Carlos opened his eyes, but he looked just as confused and dizzy as Elena felt. What's happening? He mumbled. Max ran to Carlos and started pawing at his arm too, whining even louder. The dog's behavior was becoming more frantic by the minute. We need to get up, Elena said, though she wasn't sure why. Something deep in her mind was telling her they were all in danger. Something's not right. She tried to stand up from the couch, but the room spun around her. Carlos sat up slowly, holding his head in his hands. I feel sick, he said. That's when Elena remembered her nursing classes about carbon monoxide poisoning. The silent killer, her teacher had called it. A gas with no smell that could fill up a house and make people sick without them even knowing it. But carbon monoxide didn't have a smell. So what was that sweet metallic scent in the air? Carlos, Elena said, her voice getting more urgent. I think we might have a gas leak or something worse. We need to check on your parents and get everyone outside. Max seemed to understand what Elena was saying. He ran toward the back bedroom where Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel were sleeping. His barking got louder and more desperate. Sophie felt scared watching her parents move so slowly and seeing Max so upset. Mama, what's wrong? Why is everyone acting so weird? Elena reached for Sophie and pulled her close. I don't know yet, Mija, but we're going to figure it out. Max is trying to help us. Carlos tried to stand up, but he was wobbly on his feet. The furnace, he said suddenly. Remember? We had that repair work done last week because it wasn't heating properly. Elena's heart started beating faster. Furnace problems could mean carbon monoxide leaks. The sweet smell might be something else. Maybe a gas additive or something burning that shouldn't be burning. Max ran back from the bedroom, barking frantically. He grabbed Sophie's pajama sleeve again and started pulling her toward the front door. He wants us to go outside, Sophie said. Elena knew they needed to listen to Max. Dogs could sometimes sense dangers that humans couldn't. Okay, she said, trying to think clearly through her dizziness. Everyone outside. Right now. But as Elena helped Carlos to his feet, she heard something that made her blood run cold. A very faint hissing sound coming from somewhere in the house. It was so quiet she almost missed it, but it was definitely there. Max's barking became even more urgent. He ran to the front door and back to the family, over and over, his brown eyes wild with worry. Sophie suddenly felt dizzy too, just like her parents. The room seemed to tilt a little bit, and she had to grab onto the couch to keep from falling. Mama, she said in a small voice. I don't feel good either. Elena's nursing instincts took over completely. Whatever was happening in their house, it was affecting all of them, and it was getting worse by the minute. They had to get out immediately. Everyone to the door now, Elena said, as loudly as she could. Don't stop for anything. But even as she said it, Elena realized they still had to get Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel from the back bedroom. The elderly couple would be affected worst of all by whatever was poisoning the air in their house. How much time did they have before it was too late? Elena's nursing training kicked in like a switch had been flipped in her brain. She looked at Carlos's face and saw something that made her heart pound. His cheeks had a strange reddish color, like he had been out in the cold too long. Combined with the confusion, dizziness, and that sweet smell, she knew exactly what they were dealing with. Carbon monoxide, she said out loud. Carlos, we have carbon monoxide poisoning. The words hit the family like a splash of cold water. Everyone had heard of the silent killer that could fill up houses and hurt families without them knowing. Everyone, "Outside right now!" Elena shouted, louder than she had ever yelled in the house before. "Sophie, go to the front door and open it. Don't come back inside no matter what." Sophie felt scared, but she trusted her mama completely. She ran to the front door on shaky legs, Max right beside her. When she opened it, the cold December air rushed in like a wave. It was freezing outside, but somehow the cold air made her feel a tiny bit better right away. Max ran outside into the snow, then back to Sophie, then outside again. He was still barking, but now it sounded a little bit like relief mixed with his worry. "Stay right there, mija," Elena called to Sophie. "Don't come back in." Elena knew that every second counted now. Carbon monoxide poisoning got worse the longer. You breathed it, and older people like Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel were in the most danger. She had to get them out of the house immediately. Carlos was trying to walk, but he was stumbling like he was dizzy. Elena put her arm around him and helped him toward the door. "Can you make it outside?" she asked. "I think so," Carlos said, but his voice still sounded thick and confused. Elena helped Carlos to the front door, where Sophie was waiting in her pajamas in the cold air. "Stay with Papa," Elena told her. "I have to get Grandma and Grandpa." "Mama, don't go back in there," Sophie said, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. "I have to, mija. They need help." Max seemed to understand what Elena was planning. He ran back into the house ahead of her, heading straight for the back bedroom. Elena followed him, holding her breath as much as she could. The back bedroom was small and dark. Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel were sleeping in the twin beds, breathing deeply, too deeply. Elena could see right away that they were in worse shape than everyone else. Grandpa Miguel's face had that same reddish color as Carlos, but even stronger. "Rosa! Miguel!" Elena shook Grandma Rosa's shoulder hard. "You have to wake up right now." Maxie jumped up on Grandma Rosa's bed and started pawing at her face, whining loudly. Finally, the older woman opened her eyes, but she looked very confused. "Elena? What's happening?" Grandma Rosa's voice was weak and shaky. "We have to get outside immediately," Elena said. "The house isn't safe." Elena helped Grandma Rosa sit up, while Max ran to Grandpa Miguel's bed. The older man was harder to wake up. Max pawed at him and barked, but Grandpa Miguel barely moved. "Miguel!" Elena called. "Wake up!" Elena's heart was racing. She could feel herself getting dizzier the longer she stayed in the house. The carbon monoxide was still filling the air, and soon she might be too weak to help anyone. Finally, Grandpa Miguel opened his eyes, but he looked very sick and confused. "I don't feel well," he mumbled. "I know," Elena said. "We're going to get you outside where you'll feel better." With Max's help, Elena managed to get both grandparents to their feet. But they were moving very slowly, and Elena could tell they were in serious danger. Grandpa, Miguel could barely walk, and Grandma Rosa was leaning heavily on Elena's arm. Step by step, they made their way down the hallway. Max ran ahead of them, then back, then ahead again, like he was making sure they were following him to safety. When they finally reached the front door, the cold air hit them like a slap. Carlos was sitting on the front steps with Sophie, both of them breathing the clean December air. Sophie ran to Elena and hugged her tight. "Mama, I was so scared you weren't coming back out," Sophie cried. Elena was breathing hard, but the fresh air was already making her feel clearer. She helped Grandma Rosa and Grandpa Miguel sit down on the front steps, away from the house. "Carlos, call 911 right now," Elena said. "Tell them we have carbon monoxide poisoning at 1247 Maple Street. 5 people affected, including a child and 2 elderly adults." Carlos pulled out his phone with shaky hands and dialed. Elena could hear him talking to the emergency operator, explaining what was happening. Max sat down next to Sophie in the ichor, snow, finally letting his tail wag just a little bit. He had gotten his whole pack to safety, just like his instincts told him to do. But Elena looked at Grandpa Miguel and felt worried. He was the sickest of all of them, and she wasn't sure they had gotten him out in time. His breathing was shallow, and his eyes kept closing even though he was sitting up. In the distance, Elena could hear sirens getting louder and louder. Help was coming, but would it be fast enough to save everyone Max had worked so hard to rescue? The Vadri, first fire truck rounded the corner onto Maple Street with its red lights flashing against the early morning darkness. Behind it came an ambulance, then another fire truck, then police cars. The quiet Christmas Eve morning suddenly filled with sirens and flashing lights. Max barked at all the big vehicles, but he stayed close to Sophie on the front steps. Even with all the noise and strangers coming toward their house, he wasn't going to leave his family. Fire Chief Robert Thompson jumped out of his truck and ran toward the Martinez family. He was a tall man with kind eyes who had been fighting fires in Cedar Falls for 20 years. "Is everyone out of the house?" Chief Thompson asked Elena. "Yes, all 5 of us are here," Elena said. "I'm a nurse. I think we have carbon monoxide, poisoning from our furnace." "Good thinking," Chief Thompson said. "You probably saved your family's life by getting everyone outside." Paramedics rushed over with oxygen masks and medical equipment. They put clear plastic masks over everyone's faces, and immediately, Sophie felt even better breathing the pure oxygen. "Deep breaths, sweetie," said paramedic Jenny Walsh, who had curly red hair and a gentle voice. "This oxygen is going to help your body feel much better." But when the paramedics checked Grandpa Miguel, their faces became serious. His oxygen levels were very low, and he was having trouble staying awake even with the oxygen mask on. "We need to get him to the hospital right away," Jenny told her partner Mike. "The elderly gentleman is in critical condition." Elena felt her heart sink. Grandpa Miguel was Carlos's father-in-law, but he had become like a real father to both of them. He was the one who taught Sophie how to ride her bike and always brought her books about dogs and horses. "Is he going to be okay?" Sophie asked, her voice muffled by the oxygen mask. "The doctors at the hospital are very good," Jenny said kindly. "They know exactly how to help people who have breathed bad air." While the paramedics worked, firefighters went into the Martinez house wearing special masks and carrying equipment to test the air. Chief Thompson came back out after a few minutes, shaking his head. "Your carbon monoxide levels in there are definitely dangerous," he told the family. "Your furnace has a cracked part that was leaking gas all night. If you had stayed inside much longer, this could have been a very different situation." Carlos looked down at Max, who was sitting alert in the snow, watching everything that was happening. "Max saved our lives," Carlos said quietly. Chief Thompson looked at the chocolate Labrador with respect. "Smart dog. Animals can sometimes sense things we can't. He knew you were all in danger before any of our machines would have detected it." The paramedics loaded Grandpa Miguel into the first ambulance. Grandma Rosa rode with him, holding his hand and speaking to him softly in Spanish. Elena, Carlos, and Sophie got into the second ambulance for the drive to Covenant Medical Center in Waterloo. "What about Max?" Sophie asked as they prepared to leave. He can't come with us to the hospital, can he? Elena's sister, Maria, had already driven over from Des Moines after Elena called her. I'll take care of Max, Maria promised Sophie. He'll be safe with me until you come home. But Max didn't want to go with Maria. He sat in the hospital parking lot and watched the ambulance doors close. Even when Maria tried to lead him to her car, he pulled toward the hospital entrance. He wants to stay close to you, Maria told Sophie through the ambulance window. I'll bring him back here so you can see him, okay? At the hospital, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, no relation to paramedic Jenny, took charge of the family's care. She was a small woman with gray hair who had been treating carbon monoxide poisoning cases for 15 years. You're very lucky, Dr. Walsh told the family as they sat in the emergency room breathing oxygen through masks. Your dog probably added years to all of your lives by getting you out when he did. Sophie and Elena were feeling much better after an hour of oxygen treatment. Carlos was improving too, though he still felt weak and dizzy. But Grandpa Miguel was in the intensive care unit, and the doctors were worried about him. Carbon monoxide poisoning is especially dangerous for older people, Dr. Walsh explained to the family. Their bodies can't fight off the effects as well. We're doing everything we can for him. The family spent Christmas Eve in the hospital waiting room. Other families were there too, some visiting relatives, others dealing with their own emergencies. But none of them had a story quite like the Martinez family's story. A local news reporter named Amanda Chen heard about what happened and came to the hospital. Dog Saves Family from Carbon Monoxide Poisoning became the headline in the Cedar Tidroides Falls Gazette the next morning. But the Martinez family was too worried about Grandpa Miguel to think about being in the newspaper. Sophie kept asking about Max. Finally, Maria brought him to the hospital courtyard where Sophie could see him through the window. When Max spotted Sophie, his tail wagged for the first time since the whole scary morning began. Look, Max, Sophie said, pressing her hand against the window. I'm okay. We're all okay because of you. Max put his front paws up on the window and looked directly at Sophie. It was like he was making sure she was really safe. That night, the family took turns sitting with Grandpa Miguel in his hospital room. Carlos held his father-in-law's hand and talked to him quietly. You always told me that animals know things people don't, Carlos whispered to the sleeping man. Max proved you right, Papa. He saved all of us. As Christmas morning approached, the whole family was thinking the same thing. Would Grandpa Miguel be okay? Max had gotten them out of the house in time, but was it soon enough to save the person who needed help the most? The monitors around. Grandpa Miguel's bed beeped steadily through the night, but his condition remained serious. And then, just as the sun started to rise on Christmas Day, something unexpected happened that would change everything. At 6:15 a.m. on Christmas morning, the monitors around Grandpa Miguel's bed started beeping faster. Not the scary, urgent beeping. That meant something was wrong, but a steady, strong rhythm that made the nurses smile. Elena was dozing in the chair next to his bed when she heard the change. She opened her eyes and looked at the screen that showed his oxygen levels. The numbers were going up instead of staying the same. Miguel? Elena whispered, leaning forward in her chair. Grandpa Miguel's eyes fluttered open. For the first time since the carbon monoxide poisoning, they looked clear and alert, instead of confused and sleepy. Elena? His voice was scratchy, but it sounded like himself again. Where am I? And why does everything smell like cleaning supplies? Elena started crying happy tears. You're in the hospital, Papa. But you're going to be okay. Dr. Walsh came into the room for her morning check and stopped in surprise when she saw Grandpa Miguel sitting up in bed, looking around with bright eyes. "Well, this is remarkable," Dr. Walsh said, checking his chart. "Your oxygen levels have improved dramatically overnight. How are you feeling, Mr. Martinez?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Grandpa Miguel said honestly. "But also like I want some coffee and real food instead of whatever comes through these tubes." Dr. Walsh laughed. "Complaining about hospital food is always a good sign. Let me get the rest of your family. They've been very worried about you." Within minutes, Carlos, Sophie, and Grandma Rosa crowded into the small hospital room. Sophie hugged her grandfather carefully, trying not to disturb all the wires and tubes. "Grandpa, you scared us so much," Sophie said. "We thought you might not wake up." "It takes more than some bad air to keep me down, mija," Grandpa Miguel said, though his voice was still weak. "I heard that Max saved us all." "Where is that hero dog?" "He's with Aunt Maria, but he won't leave the hospital," Sophie explained. "He keeps waiting in the parking lot for us to come outside." Dr. Walsh finished checking Grandpa Miguel's vital signs and smiled at the family. "I don't know how to explain it medically, but his recovery is much faster than we expected for someone his age. Sometimes the human body surprises us in the best ways." "When can we go home?" Carlos asked. "I'd like to keep everyone for observation through tomorrow, just to be safe," Dr. Walsh said. "But if Mr. Martinez continues improving like this, you should all be able to go home on December 26th. The news felt like the best Christmas present the family could have asked for. They were all going to be okay, and they were going to go home together. Later that morning, Maria brought Max to the hospital courtyard again, so the family could see him through the window. This time, Sophie was able to go outside for a few minutes to give him a proper hug. "Max, you saved Grandpa," Sophie whispered into his soft fur. "You saved all of us." Max's tail wagged so hard his whole body wiggled. He licked Sophie's face, and then sat perfectly still while she hugged him, like he understood how important this moment was. The story of Max's heroism spread beyond Cedar Falls. The American Red Cross called the hospital wanting to give Max their Animal Hero Award. The Iowa Humane Society wanted to put his picture in their newsletter. A television station from Des Moines wanted to interview the family. But for the Martinez family, the real miracle was simpler than all that attention. They were alive, they were together, and they were going to have many more Christmases because of their brave dog. On December 26th, when the family finally came home, they found their front yard covered with flowers, cards, and dog treats. Neighbors and complete strangers had heard their story and wanted to celebrate Max. Mrs. Henderson from next door had made a giant card signed by everyone on Maple Street. It said, "To Max, our neighborhood hero. Thank you for saving the Martinez family." The house smelled clean and fresh. The fire department had fixed the furnace and tested the air to make sure it was completely safe. Chief Thompson had even installed new carbon monoxide detectors in every room. "Your house is safer now than it was before," Chief Thompson told Carlos. "And you have the smartest dog in Iowa watching over you." That evening, the family sat in their living room for the first time since the poisoning. The Christmas tree was still up, and the presents were still wrapped under it. They had missed Christmas morning, but they decided to have their celebration anyway. Sophie opened her presents while Max lay on his favorite rug, finally relaxed now that his whole pack was home and safe. Grandpa Miguel sat in the big armchair, still weak but smiling, as he watched Sophie tear into her gifts. "We need to do something special for Max," Sophie announced. "He gave us the best Christmas present ever. He saved our lives." Elena smiled. "What do you think we should do?" Sophie thought for a moment. I want to make December 23rd Max Day every year. We can celebrate him and remember what he did for us." "That's a perfect idea," Grandpa Miguel said. "And I want to spend extra time with Max every morning. This dog gave me more time with my granddaughter. I owe him everything." Carlos looked at Max, who was chewing contentedly on a new bone that someone had brought as a gift. "You know what's amazing? Max doesn't even know he's a hero. To him, he was just taking care of his family." Elena nodded. "That's what makes him so special. He wasn't trying to be famous or get rewards. He just loved us enough to save us." As the family settled in for their first night back home, Max did what he always did. He made one final round of the house, checking on everyone. But this time, when he looked in on each family member, there was something different in his brown eyes. It was the look of a dog who had done the most important job of his life and knew that his pack was safe. Outside, snow continued to fall on Maple Street, covering the world in peaceful white. Inside the Martinez house, a hero dog slept, peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams brave dogs dream, while the family he saved slept safely around him. 6 months passed peacefully on Maple Street. The Martinez family settled back into their normal routine, but with a new appreciation for each ordinary day. Sophie finished 3rd grade and started 4th grade in the fall. Grandpa Miguel grew stronger every week and spent his mornings teaching Max new tricks in the backyard. Elena returned to her nursing job with a deeper understanding of how precious life could be. Max seemed to enjoy his fame at first. Children in the neighborhood would stop by to pet the hero dog, and Sophie loved telling his story to anyone who would listen. But as the months went by, Max was content to go back to being a regular family dog who loved belly rubs, chasing tennis balls, and sleeping on his favorite rug. The family thought their amazing story was complete. They had their miracle, Max had his recognition, and life was good. That's why nobody expected the knock on their front door on a warm June morning in 2020. Elena opened the door to find a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a friendly smile. She wore a white coat over her regular clothes and carried a leather bag that looked like it might belong to a doctor. "Hello, I'm Dr. Sarah Chen," the woman said. "I'm a veterinary neurologist from Iowa State University. I've been studying Max's case as part of my research. I was wondering if I could speak with your family about what happened last December." Elena invited Dr. Chen inside, curious about what a veterinary neurologist would want to know about Max. The whole family gathered in the living room: Elena, Carlos, Sophie, and both grandparents, who were staying for another visit. Max trotted over to sniff the new visitor, his tail wagging politely. "What kind of research are you doing?" Carlos asked, as Dr. Chen sat down on the couch. "I study how dogs' brains work," Dr. Chen explained in simple terms. "I'm particularly interested in how they detect dangers that humans can't sense. Max's story caught my attention because what he did was so extraordinary." Sophie perked up. "Max is the smartest dog in the world," she said proudly. Dr. Chen smiled. "He certainly proved that. But I've been studying the details of that night, and I've discovered some things that make Max's actions even more remarkable than anyone realized." Dr. Chen opened her leather bag and pulled out some papers and photographs. "I've been working with the Cedar Falls Fire Department, reviewing their report from your house. I also studied research about how dogs detect different types of danger." "What did you find?" Elena asked, leaning forward with interest. "Well, dogs can detect carbon monoxide, but they're actually affected by it just like humans are. Sometimes, even more quickly because they're smaller," Dr. Chen explained. "The interesting thing is that Max showed no signs of being affected by the gas at all. He stayed alert, and focused the entire time. Grandpa Miguel frowned. But the house was full of carbon monoxide. How could Max not be affected? That's exactly what puzzled me, Dr. Chen said. So I looked deeper into the fire department's findings. It turns out that Max didn't just detect the carbon monoxide, he detected something much more complex. Dr. Chen spread out some papers on the coffee table. They showed diagrams of the Martinez house and charts with numbers that Sophie didn't understand. The fire department found that your house has a very unusual air circulation pattern because of its age and the recent renovations, Dr. Chen continued. The carbon monoxide was pooling in certain areas, but there were pockets of cleaner air throughout the house. Carlos nodded. Chief Thompson mentioned something about that, but we were too worried about everyone's health to ask for details. Here's what makes Max so special, Dr. Chen said, her voice getting excited. I believe Max wasn't just smelling the carbon monoxide. He was detecting changes in your family's breathing patterns. Elena blinked in surprise. Our breathing patterns? Dogs have incredible hearing, much better than humans. Max lives with you every day, so he knows exactly how each of you sounds when you sleep normally. That night, as the carbon monoxide started affecting you, your breathing became slower and more irregular. Max heard those changes hours before the gas levels became dangerous. Sophie's eyes went wide. So Max heard that we were getting sick before we even knew it? Exactly, Dr. Chen said. Max saved you by knowing you. He recognized that something was wrong with his family's normal patterns, even though he probably didn't understand what carbon monoxide was. The family sat in amazed silence for a moment. Max, oblivious to the conversation about him, had found a tennis ball and was chewing on it contentedly. But that's not the most remarkable part, Dr. Chen continued. I've also been researching Max's background, and I discovered something about his family history that you should know. Elena felt a flutter of curiosity. They had adopted Max from a local shelter when he was 6 months old, but they didn't know much about his life before that. Max comes from a very special bloodline, Dr. Chen said. His mother was a search and rescue dog who worked after the 2008 Iowa floods. She was trained to find people trapped in damaged buildings. His grandmother was also a working dog. She helped find survivors after tornadoes. Carlos leaned back in his chair. So Max comes from a family of hero dogs? In a way, yes. His genetic heritage includes generations of dogs who were bred and trained to save human lives. What Max did wasn't just instinct, it was in his blood. Sophie looked at Max with new amazement. Max, you come from a whole family of heroes. Dr. Chen gathered her papers and smiled at the family. Max didn't just save your lives by accident. His ancestors have been saving people for generations. You didn't just adopt a pet. You adopted a guardian with a legacy of protecting families. As Dr. Chen prepared to leave, she paused at the door. There's one more thing about that night that I still can't fully explain scientifically. Something that makes Max's story even more mysterious than we realized. Elena felt her heart skip a beat. What do you mean? Dr. Chen looked back at Max, who had moved to his favorite spot by the window where he could watch the street. I've studied all the evidence, and there's something about Max's behavior that defies everything we know about canine detection abilities. Something that suggests he knew your family was in danger long before any science can explain. What could Dr. Chen mean? What mystery about that December night was still unsolved? Dr. Chen's words hung in the air like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Elena invited her to sit back down, sensing that this final piece of Max's story was the most important one of all. I need to show you something that Fire Chief Thompson discovered during his investigation, Dr. Chen said, pulling out a folder she had kept separate from her other papers. He didn't share this with your family at the time because everyone was focused on recovery. But now I think you should know. Sophie scooted closer to her parents on the couch. Max seemed to sense the serious mood in the room and came over to lie down at Sophie's feet, as if he wanted to be part of whatever was happening. Dr. Chen opened the folder and spread out several photographs and documents. These are from the fire department's detailed investigation of your house. Chief Thompson wanted to understand exactly how the carbon monoxide leak developed that night. The first photograph showed the Martinez family's basement, with arrows pointing to their furnace and various pipes. The second showed charts with times and numbers that looked very official. When Chief Thompson tested your house on December 23rd, he found something puzzling, Dr. Chen continued. The carbon monoxide levels were highest in the basement and main floor, but your bedrooms upstairs had much lower concentrations. Carlos frowned. But Max woke Sophie up first, and she was upstairs in the safest part of the house. Exactly, Dr. Chen said. If Max was just detecting carbon monoxide, he would have been most concerned about the people sleeping downstairs, your parents and grandparents. But instead, he started with Sophie. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. What does that mean? Dr. Chen pulled out another document. Chief Thompson did more investigating and discovered that your house has a very specific air circulation pattern. Because of the recent renovations and the way your old heating system works, there were actually pockets of cleaner air throughout the house that night. She pointed to a diagram of their house with different colored areas marked on it. The carbon monoxide was pooling in specific zones, but there were safe spaces too. Max seemed to understand this pattern perfectly, even though no human could have figured it out. Grandpa Miguel leaned forward in his chair. You're saying Max knew which parts of the house were dangerous and which parts were safe? That's what the evidence suggests, Dr. Chen said. But here's the most mysterious part. I checked the timeline of events very carefully using the fire department's report and the neighbor's security camera footage. Dr. Chen pulled out the final piece of evidence, a printout from a security camera that showed timestamps and grainy images. According to this footage from your neighbor's camera, Max was outside in your yard looking up at your house and whining. At 2:30 in the morning, almost 3 hours before he woke Sophie up, the family stared at the evidence in amazement. In the blurry photograph, they could see Max's distinctive shape in their front yard, clearly agitated and focused on their house. But how is that possible? Sophie asked. The carbon monoxide wasn't dangerous yet at 2:30, was it? Dr. Chen shook her head. That's exactly the mystery. According to our analysis, the dangerous carbon monoxide levels didn't reach your bedrooms until around 5 a.m. But Max knew something was wrong hours before any human or scientific instrument could have detected the danger. Elena felt goosebumps on her arms. So, Max predicted that we were going to be in danger? It appears that way, Dr. Chen said quietly. I've tested Max's hearing, smell, and other senses extensively over the past few months. While they're excellent for a dog, they're not superhuman. Yet somehow, he knew your family was going to be threatened hours before the threat actually reached you. The room fell silent as the family absorbed this information. Max, still lying peacefully at Sophie's feet, seemed completely unaware that he was the subject of such intense discussion. Grandpa Miguel was the first to speak. I've always said that animals know things we don't understand. Maybe Max felt something that science can't measure. Dr. Chen nodded. That's the conclusion I've reached after months of research. Max's case represents what we call unexplained protective intuition. He somehow sensed that his family was going to be in danger and prepared to act when the moment came. Carlos looked down at Max with new wonder. So, our dog is not just smart. He can predict the future? Not exactly predict the future, Dr. Chen explained. But he has some kind of deep connection to your family that allows him to sense threats before they become obvious. Whether you call it intuition, instinct, or something beyond scientific understanding, Max knew you needed protection. Sophie reached down to pet Max's soft fur. Max, you're even more special than we thought. Dr. Chen gathered her papers and smiled at the family. My research shows that Max's actions that night combined learned skills from his rescue dog bloodline, exceptional sensory abilities, and something that science simply can't explain yet. He's a remarkable animal, with an extraordinary bond to your family. Elena felt tears in her eyes as she looked at their beloved dog. All this time, we thought Max just happened to wake up at the right moment. But he was actually watching over us for hours, waiting to save us. The most beautiful part, Dr. Chen said as she stood to leave, is that Max doesn't need scientific explanations or awards to know he did the right thing. To him, protecting his family is just what love looks like. As Dr. Chen reached the door, she turned back one more time. There's something else I discovered about that night that even I find hard to believe. Something about Max's behavior that shows just how deep his connection to your family really goes. Elena's heart raced. After all these revelations, there was still more to learn about their hero dog. What else could there possibly be? Carlos asked. Dr. Chen smiled mysteriously. Max didn't just save your lives that night. The way he did it reveals something about animal love that will change how you see him forever. What final secret about Max's heroic night was Dr. Chen about to reveal? How could Max's love for his family be even more extraordinary than they already knew? Dr. Chen paused at the doorway, her hand on the handle, as if she was deciding whether to share this final piece of Max's story. The Martinez family waited in complete silence. Even Max seemed to sense that something very important was about to be revealed. The last thing I discovered about that night, Dr. Chen said slowly, came from studying the exact order and timing of Max's actions. When I mapped out everything he did, hour by hour, I found something that defies all scientific explanation. She came back into the living room and sat down one more time. From her folder, she pulled out a timeline written in careful handwriting with different colored pens marking different events. I've spent months analyzing every detail of December 23rd, Dr. Chen began. The neighbor's security camera actually captured more footage than we initially realized. It shows Max's behavior throughout the entire night. Sophie leaned forward eagerly. What did Max do? Dr. Chen pointed to her timeline. At 2:30 a.m., Max went outside and looked up at your house. But here's what's remarkable. He didn't just look randomly. The camera shows him looking at each window, in a very specific order. She traced her finger along the timeline. First, he looked at Sophie's bedroom window for several minutes. Then he looked at the grandparents' bedroom window. Then your parents' window, where they were sleeping on the pull-out couch. Finally, he looked at the basement window near the furnace. Carlos frowned. That's the exact order he woke us up later. Exactly, Dr. Chen said, her voice filled with wonder. But at 2:30 a.m., Max did something else that the camera captured. After looking at each window, he sat down in the yard and, well, this is the part that's hard to explain scientifically. Elena felt her heart beating faster. What did he do? Max began what I can only describe as a vigil, Dr. Chen said softly. For the next 3 hours, he sat in the same spot in your yard, never taking his eyes off your house. He didn't sleep, didn't play, didn't even move to get a drink of water. He just watched over you. The family looked at Max, who was now sitting up and listening to Dr. Chen's voice, with his head tilted to one side, as if he remembered that night. The most extraordinary part, Dr. Chen continued, is that every 30 minutes, like clockwork, Max would get up and walk a circle around your house. The security camera from the neighbor across the street caught him doing this. He was patrolling, making sure your family was safe, hours before the danger actually arrived. Grandpa Miguel's eyes filled with tears. He was guarding us all night. Dr. Chen nodded. But here's what made me realize that Max's love goes beyond anything science can measure. At 5:15 a.m., when the carbon monoxide levels finally became dangerous, Max didn't just spring into action randomly. He followed a plan. She showed them a detailed map of their house with arrows and numbers. Max entered the house and went directly to Sophie first. Not because her room had the highest carbon monoxide levels, it didn't, but because she was the youngest and most vulnerable member of the pack. Then he went to the grandparents, the next most vulnerable. Finally, he made sure the adults were safe. Elena gasped. He was following a rescue priority system. Exactly like a trained emergency responder would, Dr. Chen confirmed. Children first, elderly second, adults last. But Max was never trained for this. He developed this plan himself, out of pure love for his family. Sophie reached down and hugged Max tightly. "You spent the whole night protecting us, didn't you, boy?" Dr. Chen's voice became even softer. "There's one more thing. The camera footage shows that at 5:45 a.m., after Max had successfully gotten everyone outside and the ambulances were coming, he did something that made me understand the true depth of his love." She paused, and Elena could see tears forming in the scientist's eyes. "What did he do?" Carlos asked gently. Max walked back to the spot in the yard where he had kept his vigil all night, Dr. Chen said. And he sat down in exactly the same position, watching the house until the fire department declared it safe. Even after he had saved everyone, he continued guarding your home. The room was completely quiet, except for the sound of Max's gentle breathing. The family looked at their dog with a mixture of amazement, gratitude, and overwhelming love. For Max, Dr. Chen continued, that night wasn't about being a hero or getting recognition. It was about doing what love looks like when your family needs you most. He spent 6 hours protecting you before you even knew you were in danger. Sophie was crying now, happy tears that rolled down her cheeks as she buried her face in Max's fur. "Max, I love you so much." Elena wiped her own tears. "All this time, we thought Max just happened to wake up at the right moment. But he was actually planning our rescue for hours." Dr. Chen stood up to leave for the final time. "Max's story has taught me something about the love between animals and humans that I never understood before. True love doesn't wait for danger to appear. It watches, it prepares, and it acts before tragedy can strike." As Dr. Chen reached the door, she turned back with a smile. Max didn't just save your lives that December night. He showed you what unconditional love really means. Every single day, Max is watching over you, ready to protect you from whatever might threaten your family. After Dr. Chen left, the Martinez family sat together in their living room, looking at Max with completely new eyes. Their dog, who was now chewing on his favorite rope toy, had no idea that he had just been revealed as the most loving guardian they could ever imagine. "You know what this means?" Sophie said, still sniffling a little from her happy tears. What, mija? Elena asked. Every night when Max does his little walk around the house before bedtime, he's not just checking things out. He's protecting us. He's been our guardian angel this whole time. Carlos looked at Max, who had moved to his favorite spot by the window. The same spot where he could watch the street and keep an eye on his family at the same time. Max, Carlos said softly, you don't protect us just when there's danger. You protect us every single day, just because you love us. Max looked up at the sound of his name, his tail wagging gently. To him, this was just another normal day with his family. He had no idea that his humans had finally understood the full depth of his love. As the sun set that evening, Max did what he always did. He made one final check of the house, looking in on each family member to make sure they were safe and sound. But now the Martinez family knew the truth. This wasn't just a bedtime routine. This was Max's nightly promise that he would always be watching over them. For Max, being a hero wasn't about one special night in December. It was about being exactly where he belonged, every single day. Home with the people he loved most, ready to protect them with everything he had. The greatest miracle wasn't that Max saved them once. The greatest miracle was that he loved them enough to spend every day of his life making sure they would always be safe. Max showed us that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they have 4 paws, a wagging tail, and a heart full of unconditional love. His story reminds us that the greatest acts of heroism often come from simply caring deeply about the people we love. We'd love to know where you're listening from today. Drop a comment below and tell us your city or country. It's amazing to connect with kind-hearted people from all around the world who believe in the power of these inspiring stories. If Max's story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We share uplifting true stories like this one every week because the world needs more kindness, hope, and reminders of the good that exists all around us. And here's the most important part. Please share this video with your friends and family. Stories like Max's have the power to spread awareness about carbon monoxide safety, remind us to cherish our pets, and show us that love truly can save lives. When we share kindness, it multiplies. Thank you for taking this emotional journey with the Martinez family and their hero dog Max. Until next time, remember to hug your loved ones a little tighter, both the 2-legged and 4-legged ones. Stay safe, stay kind, and we'll see you in the next story.